So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay. This one was sent to me by Second Pink, and it's going to be, I think this one is called the Dwarven Mines, and it is obviously, well, it is a siege battle, but it is a settlement that has no walls as such. It's just a series of choke points essentially with a few sort of terrain features that can be used as cover. But obviously it is quite compact, so the attackers won't be able to simply force their way through quite so easily because the defenders are going to be quite tightly packed. But obviously the defenders don't really have much room to manoeuvre, so they do have to sort of construct their lines with a good amount of rigidity, because as soon as they start to fall apart, chances are it's going to go in one direction. However, we shall start off with the attacking army, starting off with new player 195, and he's going to be playing as Harad. Several units of Haradrim Spearmen here at the front. There's several Rams as well, but they are unnecessary, of course, because of the type of map that it is. So, of course, Haradrim Spearmen going to be leading the way as the chaff. I think that's 2 units of them, in fact. As we have a look over here, we have a couple of units of Southron Archers, which, as far as the Haradrim Archers go, I mean, none of them are particularly heavy duty, but the Southron Archers will be able to stand up to a little bit more range fire than any of their peers. And he does have a ballista as well, which in the narrow confines of the settlement might well be very, very useful indeed. Obviously it is just a standard ballista, but it will be useful for sniping out any defensive siege pieces, which could well prove to be a big gain for the attackers should they be able to do so. They've actually got some standard Haradrim Archers back here as well, obviously one of the lowest tier of Haradrim Archers that they can bring, but you know, when it comes to being on the attack, you have to make sacrifices somewhere, of course, because you're going to have less money, and this is where they have chosen to do so. Obviously we do also have the Southron Warband over here, which are a very effective unit for Harad. That AP Spear means that they can be put on the front line and they will hold relatively well against any sort of mass, and they will deal some decent AP damage as well. Moving into the centre of their line, this is a unit which didn't really get a lot of love before the hotfix, but we'll see how well they perform in this situation. You have the standard variant of the dismounted Serpent Guard, so they don't have their armour upgrades, but they're still here in force, the strong mainline infantry unit that Harad can field. Decent unit. I've always thought quite highly of the Serpent Guard, although in the last hotfix they were certainly a superfluous part of the Haradrim force, but we'll see how well they can do in a more grindy situation like this. And then back here, this is the General's bodyguard unit, so he's got his General in the Champions of Nafarat, which is unsurprising because they are very, very tough, and of course they deal an awful lot of damage. Speaking of dealing an awful lot of damage, we have the Demons of the Desert, which in terms of javelins might well be the single most devastating unit in the game, simply because they have that thrown trait. Their projectiles tend to send units flying as well. Very, very tough, and also pretty good in melee as well, although they can be quite vulnerable to missiles. Then we have some Trollmen, of course, again, very similar sort of thing here, very high damage, even with their sort of shielded nature. And then also a unit of Muhard Beastmaster. He's even got some cavalry here, hanging around at the back, a unit of Serpent Guard, which of course he can use in case any of the defenders break ranks. Hovering over to the other side of this battlefield, we actually have the faction which I most recently did a showcase on, and that is going to be Khan, played by Stannis Borathian. And at the front here he's got several units of nomadic light infantry, or just nomadic, well, yeah, nomadic light infantry I should say, and obviously they're going to be at the front leading the way. Decent attack values, not AP anymore of course, but obviously they're just there for their chaff purposes essentially. A couple of units here of nomadic axemen as well, of course useful for their AP values. We'll see who the defending factions actually are when we get in there, but obviously when it comes to cheaper axes they can do decently against heavily armoured front lines. And then moving out to the wing, we have some nomadic infantry, of course, the tankier of Khan's foot-based archers, which is a good investment in this sort of situation where they're hoping to sort of bleed the defenders out at the wrists, I suppose, by trying to just sort of skirmish them down. A couple of units of them, and also a unit of nomadic marauders over here, so those axe throwers will be useful should they get into firing position. Bit of a scattered approach to this Khandish army over here. I think we've got a couple of units of Variag warriors, so their skill should stand them in pretty good stead against units which are more highly skilled. And then over here, speaking of highly skilled, we have the Brotherhood of the Sword, and they scarcely come more skillful than a unit like this. Very, very powerful. I did see as well that if we look over in the distance over there, they do have the Black Powder Watcher, so we'll see if that pays off in the very confined sections that the defenders will be operating under. Some Nurad War Chiefs retainers and some Brotherhood of the Axe, so he's invested very heavily in their infantry, so I hope they don't let me down, because I did say in the showcase for Khan that their infantry was actually pretty decent, so this is the perfect opportunity to show it off, because they don't have any cavalry here. And a couple of units here of Nurad footmen, so the solid front line, and then also a couple of units of the nomadic warriors, a little bit more of a budget pick there. And then the final army is some manner of orc army, and indeed it is the orcs of the Misty Mountains. played by Rain5823. So he's got some heavy goblin archers out here on the wing. I believe that will be the case over on the other side. Yes, it is. So he's got complete to them. First line in. His catapult's quite close to the enemy settlement, to the point where we have a look at Isengard and I think, yeah, Lothlorien. They could certainly be able to shoot this catapult if they're not careful. Heavy goblin infantry, these guys are manning the ram still. This goblin infantry, they can just drop that and charge right on in. A couple of units of black urks, of course, they'll do decently against the Lothlorien troops, provided they can saturate the lines. Some heavy goblin infantry there as well. And I think this is a pretty heavy troll-focused army, and indeed he has invested quite a lot in his sort of specialised units. The wargs probably not going to be too useful here, because Isengard and Lothlorien have got such a good defensive position. They will probably just be able to sort of bulk up and then just shoot them from a distance. They'll probably be rather ineffectual. We do have some cave trolls pushing another ram, however, which is an interesting choice, but obviously they will be good line breakers. But in a situation where the defensive lines are going to be this dense, the cave trolls won't really be able to penetrate too far, because there's going to be so many there that they'll probably just fall away pretty quickly. Some goblin archers, obviously more wargs, and they do have the drake broodlings and the snow trolls as well. So yeah, overall a bit of an unorthodox Misty Mountains army, but we shall see how things go as the battle gets underway. Before that, we'll have a look at Second Pink's army. Out here is a rather interesting choice for his Galatharan nobles and his Sindar archers, because they are out in the open, and the Serpent Guard, if they see them, will certainly charge into them. There's some Snaga skirmishes here, the unique Isengard Snaga model in full effect. And obviously Isengard are going to be providing the bulk of the numbers here. The pikes are also going to be very useful, because of course Lothlorien only have access to one, and it is very expensive. And also we've got some Lothlorien archers already in range of something, as well as some Maether Ilazgelen back here, in with the Snaga. Classic alliance. And then we've got some Sylvan Spears, obviously the most numerous of the Lothlorien units that you can bring, so it's unsurprising to see quite a few of them, and also some Uruk-hai in a bit of a column formation, going across the trench there. We've also got some Lothlorien Spears, backing up the Uruk-hai pikemen, and then some Trolls of the White Hand. This is a very dense formation, so I'm just going to gloss over quite a few of these. Some Ethel Tirith. There's a lot of Lothlorien Swordmasters. There's both a Lothlorien Ballista and an Isengard Ballista. Not sure why there's no catapults in this situation, but there you go. There is actually some Isengard Warg Skirmishers, which honestly I wouldn't send them out into the field, because they're just going to get overwhelmed by the Misty Mountains Wargs and Trolls. They may as well just be used in a purely defensive fashion here. Some Lothlorien Warriors as well, Sylvan Rangers, obviously all of the things. Uruk-hai crossbows and infantry over there. So, without further ado, and provided my mouse actually cooperates with me throughout this whole battle, let us begin. This isn't the longest battle for a siege battle, and that is of course because the sort of location that we are in is quite small, and we don't have to worry about a lengthy bombardment phase, so that's always nice. Now these Lothlorien archers are not really in the prime position to be shooting in at the enemy ranks, because several of their arrows are surely going to hit this cliff face here, and indeed that's a bit of wasted ammunition. And actually, despite the fact that the catapult is sort of dangerously forward, a lot of these arrows are just hitting this terrain here, which of course means the catapult is going to stay in perfect working order. And you don't want to be wasting too many elven arrows, because every one of them counts and can do a lot of heavy damage. So Harad is moving in, but it does actually look as though Khan are going to be the first ones to collide with the enemy. There's some very strange deployments here from the defenders, because they have got quite a nice line here, but it's pointing completely the wrong way to receive the charge of that nomadic light infantry. Oh dear, that's grisly. Very, very grisly. So yeah, they need to shut down that catapult very quickly, because it's in the perfect defensive position on that hill, and it's got an ideal shot in there, and it can scarcely miss in a situation like this, because obviously the defenders are operating under very cramped conditions. And actually, before we start to lose the frames too much, let's turn it down. And obviously the nomadic light infantry getting into the side here of the Lothlorien Spears and the Uruk-hai pikemen. And obviously a unit like this isn't going to make too much of a dent in the powerful Uruk-hai pikes and the very skillful elven spears, but you know, they're getting into the side of the unit, so more damage is going to be taken than they would like. But they're also taking quite a lot of ranged fire as this is going on. Harad a little bit further away than their allies. You can see that over here the Isengard Ballista trying to get into a decent position. Let's go back up into 1 speed, and you can see as the Misty Mountains Goblins crest over the hill, and it's only one single unit of pikes here that are blocking the way. And I think they're probably going to try and go after the Isengard Ballista with the catapult here, which is not a bad idea. You might want to go into regular mode though for that, rather than the flaming ammunition. The Warg Skirmishers are going to try and escape, but they're going towards the Misty Mountains, which is risky, because they've got the most ability to shut down a unit like this. Now this is somewhat surprising, sending forward Black Uruks to the mountains first of all, because they won't really make too much of an impact on the Uruk-hai pikes, but they're also setting up the cave trolls almost immediately to follow this up, and actually I think we will just turn it down. This is where the committal of the Isengard Ballista forward here is going to be a huge mistake, because there's nothing here to assist the Isengard Ballista, and the cave trolls are just going to be able to slice through the pike line here relatively easily. Well, I say that, they actually didn't penetrate through too much, but trolls are a good answer to pikes. They can buckle the formations very well, and that's something that's going to be needed alongside the Black Uruks. Again, I'm not really sure what the Isengard player hopes to accomplish by sending his pikemen out into this very lonely section of the field, because the archers and the crossbows and the Misty Mountains actually don't have any crossbows or anything. But the archers, the trolls, the wargs are going to be able to just completely surround and finish this unit off. I'm not entirely sure what second Pink is doing. None of his units have really moved at this point in time. But over here we can also see that again the attackers just piling on the pressure from the defenders from all angles. These pikes are not in full formation yet, but they should manage to sort of get their ducks in a row relatively quickly, and then they should actually be able to hold off the lighter Kurdish units. There goes the Isengard general, who is in a unit of warg skirmishers. I question the Isengard player's mentality going into this fight, because his picks have been very, very strange indeed. Now, this battle isn't over within the first 5,000 frames, so I can only imagine the defenders do put up some manner of united front, as Khan also come forward, and actually second Pink is charging out, which again is a somewhat suicidal move, considering that these Lothlorien swordmasters are in full view of the Haradrim skirmish line. Obviously they'll beat Haradrim spears in melee, but honestly with that archer presence, maybe not. Especially not with the cavalry moving forward. It is very sloppy play from the defenders so far. But the Lothlorien ballista is trying its best, but I think we all know the victor of this fight almost immediately, because the Misty Mountains are doing their thing and are pouring forward. They've already buckled the Isengard front line. There's a ton of fire arrows coming in here, which is actually unnecessary. The Misty Mountains have already won this section of the battlefield. They don't need to risk friendly fire, which Orc archers do have a tendency to commit to quite a lot of friendly fire. But these Drake Broodlings are actually going to get defeated. They push too far, delve too deeply and too greedily, and they are going to be finished off by the combined forces of Lothlorien and Isengard here in the centre. And let's go and have a look over here, where a better front line has been sort of laid out, but again this Goblin infantry is the target of all of these javelins, which again is a complete waste. You don't want to be using your javelins on a unit like Goblin infantry. You want to be using them on the snow trolls, if at all, over here, to be honest. The snow trolls are not going to be able to get through on their own. I'm also very surprised these Uruk-hai pikes were not singled out, but with their presence now surrounding this section of the battlefield, the defenders are going to at least win one section. How are things going over here? It looks as though the Misty Mountains have sent forward. Actually no, that's the Trolls of the White Hand. And considering this is almost completely made up of Khan's lower tier infantry, the Trolls of the White Hand will do a good job of helping the Elves and the Uruk-hai pikemen keep this section of the line in check. But again, the attackers doing a good job at using their skirmishers to good effect. Over here as well, these nomadic units are actually in full view of the skirmish line. So Khan has had a pretty rough time of it so far, but the Misty Mountains, and especially Harad actually, Harad have got everything in reserve thus far. These Haradrim spearmen are now going to be able to completely surround this unit of Lothlorien swordmasters, and based on the dead horses, they did indeed get charged by the Serpent Guard, who are now going on to seek new quarries. And actually they've got a good opportunity here to charge into the backs of these Uruk-hai infantry. It's begging for a charge actually, because this will probably break them off. I mean, even fighting Haradrim spears, Harad, they've only really committed forward their really low tier units so far, and they've gotten a good return off that investment. And again, charging into these Sindar archers, I'm not entirely sure what they're doing here. I don't know what they hope to accomplish by sending their Sindar archers out here to essentially get destroyed. But yeah, this is going to be the end of Haldia. The Serpent Guard are just going to be able to cycle charge him, and he is dead. The Galathrim nobles are firing to try and save them. I don't know if this was bait to try and draw the cavalry in, but it's not worth it by a long shot. The Lothlorien warriors are coming out here, so second Pink is not like he's away from the keyboard. This is just a horrendous mistake that he's made. And over here we can also see that the Uruk-hai pikemen are pushing the line forward. So actually Isengard are pushing the Misty Mountains back on this front, assisted by Uruk-hai crossbows and more Lothlorien units. But it was over here where we saw the massive break earlier on. But actually Lothlorien and Isengard have managed to stabilise the situation over here. The outer lines were lost, but now, with liberal use of Uruk-hai and also some Sylvan spears, Looks like these Uruk-hai Berserkers are actually moving over to the other front, but they are holding on. Although the Khandish archers are getting into position to try and help the Misty Mountains break through over here. There are quite a few ways into this settlement, despite it being very small, but these Trolls of the White Hand just beasting their way through all of this low-tier Khandish stuff. These Nurad footmen have come forward. So all of this AP will eventually tell, and Khan should still have their genuinely scary units alive for the late game. Again, I'm not entirely sure what the Isengard player is doing. The Uruk-hai pikemen have pushed forward. But the Nurad footmen are right there, so they're just going to get charged in the rear, and if pikes are not in formation, they get ripped apart because their stats are relatively low. Let's see here, the Ethel Tirith have got decent shots on the Misty Mountains, but they're rather stretched. Some nomadic marauders coming forward, so some axe throwers trying to give them a hand over here. But it does look as though the defenders are sort of pinning their hopes on winning over here, perhaps, because they also sent over the Uruk-hai Berserkers to help out, and the Uruk-hai crossbows. And the Misty Mountains won't be able to stop this counter-attack, but everywhere else I wonder at the logic of the defences that have been put up. I mean, over here you can see Lothlorien warriors with their axes have been committed forward. Once again, this is a unit which is going to do really badly, and it's just going to feed cost efficiency into those units like the Haradrim archers, and there are also those Serpent Guards. So Harad playing it quite smart here, going wave by wave, just trying to wear them down because he sees that he has the advantage. So he's just trying to save what manpower he can. He's still got a lot of Serpent Guard, and he's still got his AP spears, of course, which is a potentially very nice tool to have. More Lothlorien warriors were committed forward, but again, leaving the safety of your settlement is admirable, but in this case very foolhardy, because once again another Lothlorien unit is going to take heavy damage from this Serpent Guard, and that's 3 Lothlorien units, one of which was the General's Bodyguard, which has taken severe damage, although that wasn't the best charge. But I'm sure that they will, because these Lothlorien warriors have got nowhere to go and they've got no support. I mean, there are these Uruk-hai crossbows, which could potentially do heavy damage to the Serpent Guard, but I think that unit's already dealt enough damage to make it worth bringing. These Uruk-hai Berserkers chanting. The Misty Mountains attack has actually been thrown off over in this section. And then if we have a look over here, oh dear, this big blob of defenders, including the Snaga, which have routed under that catapult fire. The catapult has lost 2 of its models, but again, I think that it's probably already done the damage that it set out to do. Those crossbows are shaken. But again, if we have a look in here, the majority of the Misty Mountains infantry over here is just heavy goblin infantry. There are blackback berserkers in there, but alone I don't think they're going to be able to make the impact they need to, especially now that the Black King is moving to surround them. I'm actually very surprised he's not going after these squishy skirmishers with a unit like the berserkers, simply because if he leaves the skirmishers be, they're going to be able to do a lot of damage to the Uruk-hai berserkers with their almost non-existent armour values. Let's go and have a look over here, where the defenders again are starting to push forward. The Ethel Tirith have been committed forward, and also these Lothlorien warriors, but I think honestly, based on the fact that the defenders still have reserves, no, the attackers still have reserves, I think that this boldness is going to count against them in the end, especially now that you see here the Nurad footmen are starting to envelop the units which counter-attacked outwards. The Veriag warriors are here as well. Trolls are still going strong though, but now there is also this way into the settlement which is completely free, and nomadic warriors are on their way in to try and take advantage of this, and they should be able to. I mean, there's really no infantry left for the defenders, which is going to be capable of stopping this attack. Oh, and here comes the Hawatcha. It's firing in. It's also hitting quite a few of its own units, so a bit of friendly fire, but it is also getting a decent amount of damage done to the defenders here. Again, a very sporadic method of fire, but I mean, at this point the defenders can afford to be a little bit frivolous with what they have. And again, these Uruk-hai crossbows are very boldly coming out of their defensive positions, trying to get into a counter-attacking position, but counter-attacking into all of this is not going to go well, especially now that Serpent Guard are on the way, and dedicated heavy infantry like this is going to easily defeat crossbows, even with the likes of the armour that the Uruk-hai crossbows bring to the table. And the Misty Mountains coming forward on this flank again. No, again, it's more Isengard counter-attacking. It seems like the defenders have been so eager to leave their defensive position. It's a very strange situation to be in. Now you can see that these nomadic warriors are coming forward, and they're going to be able to stop the ballista, I think. Or actually, no, again, this is a rather strange play to make. The nomadic warriors are coming over here to sort of surround what's left of the forces over here. But they don't need to worry about that. They're already going to win over there. They'd be much better off trying to sort of clog up the defending skirmishers or what they got left. But now they're just going to get scythed through that by that ballista. So a bit of a mistake there by the Khandish player. Been a lot of mistakes so far. Weirdly so. But over here we can see that Isengard are going to have victory over here, and they might actually have what it takes to just completely clean up with the Misty Mountains over here now. There's a lot of routing going on, and it's really just archers that they've got left and their artillery. But this is a lot of the defenders' sort of assets that they're sending far away from the town centre. I suppose what they intend to do is finish off the Misty Mountains. There's some nomadic infantry over there that's going to sort of hold them at bay, and then swing around and try and surround Khan, but honestly I don't think that they're going to have enough to sort of envelop all of the attackers, especially not when you consider what Harad have left, who have had a relatively easy time of it thus far. You can also see these Southron archers move forward, out of ammunition now. They pulled out their blades. And Harad, I think they're just going to commit themselves forward. Southron Warband are staying at home for the time being. You can see here the Lothlorien lowest tier of archer, the Etheltirith. Don't tend to do very well in a skirmish fight, and so it's turned out to be. There's a lot of them dead over here. Snaga skirmishes over here as well. And finally, if we have a look over here, the nomadic warriors took the hint, and they are now moving to shut down the Lothlorien ballista, which they are having some success at doing. Those Maetha Ilaz Gelen doing a lot of damage to the reinforcing nomadic warriors, but ultimately, if you have a look there, the Snaga skirmishers are retreating. Let's go and see how Isengard's push is going, and indeed what sort of units they have left alive. I mean, there's some berserkers and some pikes, which are going to be able to shred their way through these heavy goblin units. Heavy goblin units like this are not going to be a match for the more professional and the trained killers that are the Uruk-hai. These nomadic infantry as well. The Uruk-hai infantry are a far better unit than the nomadic infantry. But the nomadic marauders are on station. Well, there goes the Misty Mountains General. That's the Misty Mountains catapult there. Grazing hit at best. If we have a look over here, Harad is also sending forward some units to sort of pressure the flanks. The Hashari Stalkers, which we didn't see at the start. Obviously Rangers for Harad. Pretty damn good in melee as well with their skill that they bring to the table. And obviously, you know, a single unit of Sylvan Spears is going to be overwhelmed over here, so Harad applying pressure to again a point where the defenders have left themselves rather vulnerable. But the Khandish brute force is going to continue here, the Nurad footmen moving to back up the beleaguered nomadic warriors. And there isn't really much left that the defenders are going to have to fall back on, because Harad are also going to be pushing in from the other side. You can see the Southron archers are going to be leading the way. And it's not going to be long before this road is opened up to them as well. These Lothlorien archers' defeat seems certain. There's simply too many Serpent Guard, and they're also taking some shots in the side from those Southron archers. More dismounted Serpent Guard moving forward, backing up the Southron archers. So actually they're going to again move to sort of surround and open up the avenues just while these Southron archers engage the Snaga, although honestly the Snaga will lose to Southron archers in melee, so they don't really need to apply too much in the way of pressure, I suppose. But this is where the defenders are going to have some real issues. I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to come back from the wounds they essentially inflicted upon themselves early on in this fight. But the town centre is now under direct threat from two angles, and I don't think Isengard's assault has got too much in the way of legs left in it. Indeed, these Uruk-hai pikes, there are too few of them now. Their formation is going to start to buckle under the nomadic infantry. And also, over here, the Variag warriors coming to the aid of the nomadic axemen. Isengard seem intent on wiping the Misty Mountains out, just to prove who's the superior orcs, I suppose, but it is ultimately going to come to nothing when it comes to the actual result of the battle. These Sindar archers are out here. They're actually going to do decent amounts of damage depending on who they're firing at. Which is unknown because they're not actually firing into the Haradrim archers. They might be firing into the Hashari, who are actually retreating. But really this is where all the action is going to be, centred in and around the town centre from now on. But there's really very little in the way of elite units the defenders have left. They were either all committed outside or are long dead. So the Maetha Ilaz Gelen, it falls on them to essentially try and defend the town centre, but they're not going to be able to. I mean, if the attackers decided to send forward all of their Brotherhood units and the Nurad War Chiefs retainers, the defenders would crumble relatively quickly. I mean, there are these Galathran nobles who, you know, they're a very strong unit. They'll be able to hold Harad at bay for quite some time. But Harad still being the economical faction over here. They're sending forward their Muhad Beast Hunters, I was about to say Nurad there, to throw in there. I mean, liberal application of the Demons of the Desert would be enough to break the back of the defenders and end this battle in relatively short order. The dismounted Serpent Guard victorious over there. Shari Stalkers reuniting with their fellows. Interesting to see how this works out. And now you can see the nomadic infantry moving forward, and they're going to be able to shut down the Sindar archers. They won't win in melee against the Sindar archers, of course, but just preventing their ammunition from being used is going to be yet another win for the attackers. And indeed, Isengard have got very little else that they can do at this point. I mean, the Uruk-hai berserkers have moved forward and actually defeat, well, Advanced forces is evenly matched, but the Variag warriors will fight. I imagine they're going to lose this, though, against the Uruk-hai berserkers, even with the damage the Uruk-hai have taken. But that's going to change things. With the axe throwers, the Uruk-hai will certainly lose that. So yeah, Isengard's assault outside the walls has ultimately ended in failure because the Misty Mountains are still alive. The archers able to break off the pikes, so Isengard were not even able to finish off the Misty Mountains in this doomed assault. Look at the death, though. I mean, everything happened very quickly. There's huge piles of corpses all around the battlefield. But obviously it's going to be a fairly comfortable victory in the end for the attackers. Variag warriors moving forward to back up the Nomad footmen. They do need it because their lack of skill and total attacking potential against unarmoured units is going to render them a relatively ineffectual unit against this kind of elven infantry. They definitely need to send their Brotherhood of the Sword forward. Exactly the sort of unit you want to fight the elves, really. Oh, excuse me. I think that the attackers at this point are just being sporty in many ways, because if they sent forward all of their units all at once here, they would be able to crush the defenders underfoot. These Galathran nobles are essentially getting kills fed to them because these Southron archers and then the Muhar beast hunters are going to be no match for them with their gold armour. And of course their Snarga's sidekicks. But Khan moving forward here. Khan's infantry has done very well, especially considering that they haven't sent forward any of their elites yet, and considering they were facing an elven faction, which traditionally sort of runs contrary to their infantry strengths. I mean, this is all pretty good so far. Meanwhile, you can see that these Variag warriors are actually surrounded. Well, no, not so much surrounded. But these Sylvan spears, they are shaken at this point. But all it's going to take are these heavy goblins to shoot them in the back. What are they doing? They're reloading, but they're not firing at anything. We're actually going to fire into the big blob over there with some fire arrows. But yeah, the Sylvan Spears might be victorious there, but if the heavy goblin archers were to recharge them, they might break. So as we enter the final stages of this match, we can see that it is a rather doomed effort from the defenders. The Sindar archers doing a real number on that nomadic infantry. As we have a look over here, obviously the Variag warriors moving forward, and they are going to be much better placed to actually do some damage to the elves. They've got decent melee skill considering they're a relatively cheap unit. There's that Uruk-hai pike just standing on the cliff, contemplating jumping in, I imagine, after the kind of performance that this has been. And then the Snarga skirmishers routing off, unsurprisingly. And once again, the defenders, bless them, are really trying their best to be aggressive here, but the Galathran nobles, they're obviously going to cut their way through the Muhard beast hunters, but as soon as the demons of the desert decide to well, actually that's champions of Nafarat, they're actually going to get surrounded now by Serpent Guard and demons of the desert. I think that is the Isengard player has admitted defeat, which is unsurprising. He didn't really have anything left anyway. It was really only Lothlorien that had a few troops left. Surprised we're not, well, I'm disappointed in a way that we're not going to get to see the Brotherhood of the Sword and the Brotherhood of the Axe in action. Actually, you know what? I lied. They are right here. And they're on the way forward. Are they the upgraded armour model? It's hard to tell where they're moving. I think so. It looks like they've got the thicker armour on, which is good. And obviously the Brotherhood of the Sword, they're going to be able to defeat the Sindar archers. I'm not sure what they're doing. Charge in. Kill off the Sindar archers. Haldir is yours for the taking. Oh yeah, and Haldir is surrounded by swordsmen. Let's see his final moments. He's already got a bloody face. But no, actually, I think this is just the standard Brotherhood of the Sword model. It's a more subtle change between their upgraded model and their regular one. Brotherhood of the Sword with their very high melee skill. Or the Brotherhood of the Axe as well. Here they come, Nurad War Chief's retainers. I assume the Brotherhood of the Axe are somewhere. Oh, they're over there. They're content to be idle for the time being. And obviously Harada moving in now, so it is really the end. And over here we can see the Galathrim Nobles. They're a very, very strong unit, but with the champions of Nafarat, this is going to be a bridge too far for them, I think. The champions of Nafarat should be enough to defeat the Galathrim Nobles, even though it says victory seems certain. It's a testament to how powerful they really are, I suppose. Here come the Nirad War Chief retainers. I mean, they're lasting longer than I thought they would here in a final stand. Obviously, I know how long it's going to last because of the frame count, but even so, this is not half bad. These Sindar archers pull out dual swords in melee. That's a new touch. Or it might not be so new, and I might just be blind. But now the Brotherhood of the Axe are also coming in here. So an overwhelming amount of faux samurai, I suppose you'd call them. And the Nirad War Chiefs, keeping their men inspired. It's only a matter of time. I mean, the elven grit to hold on in this sort of situation is very impressive, and it shows what sort of odds the elves can actually stand up in the face of. But really the defenders did lose this battle early on. Even the mighty Galathrim nobles break in the face of the champions of Nafarat. So now we enter the closing stages, getting closer towards the final 1,000 frames. And in the town centre, of course, the enemy won't break, so these Maitha Ilaz Gelen are essentially going to be the final ones to try and make all of the loss of life worth it. But obviously they're going to fail in this regard. Champions of Nafarat moving forward, all of the Brotherhood units, so Khan really flexing their muscles here in the late game with their infantry. A lot of perpetually routing Isengard units after their player admitted defeat. There's also some fire arrows coming in. The Misty Mountains took the brunt of the defenders' ire when they decided to sally out, but ultimately even they still have some units standing. And this Dwarven mine is going to fall. No dwarves present, of course. Here we go. We may as well go into ×2 speed here. As slowly but surely, the defenders and their luck are going to run out. Interesting fight. Again, not a vintage one. I mean, it's not a completely imbalanced fight. I feel as though if the defenders didn't make all those questionable decisions, they would have fared much, much better. But ultimately some very strange attacks, some very strange deployments as well. I wouldn't say like thieves in the night. A lot of kills for the defenders, so they still did well in terms of kills, even though they, technically speaking, got rather defeated kind of easily, I would have said. But obviously over 4,000 kills for Lothlorien, did very well considering the fact that some of their units were killed quite quickly and in a manner that I wouldn't expect from a player that I've seen play as much as Second Pink. Obviously Isengard getting fewer kills, but still not a terrible score, but really a lot of the decisions here that the Isengard player made were kind of strange. But having a look, obviously the attackers all getting a relatively similar amount of kills, so everyone played their part. I think the attackers played this in exactly the manner that they needed to in order to get the win. Galathrim Nobles 418 getting some decent kills at range and in melee. Sindar Archers less so because they of course got ravaged by that Serpent Guard. But having a look elsewhere, 778 on that unit of Sylvan Rangers. So again, that just proves how dangerous Rangers can be in a siege. Without that, it probably would have been a lot less close than it was even here. So obviously the Rangers really earning their salt in this battle. And then a lot of decent kills. I mean, Ethel Tirith getting 312 and 267 decent kills on several of their melee units as well, like the Lothlorien warriors. But ultimately, I think questionable organisation cost the defenders quite dearly here. But it was neat to see this map because it is a different kind of siege, one without walls and one that is focused a little bit more around the choke points and terrain features. But obviously this can play into the attacker's hands, such as with catapults and skirmish fire, as we saw in this battle. But I think really the defenders' manoeuvring and deployments really were the things which let them down more than that. So yeah, it was an interesting fight, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next, which will be another faction showcase, I think, and next I think actually we're going to be taking a look at the Misty Mountains.